Hey everyone, welcome back to BenchyTests. Today we're going to be taking a look at this, which is an HD 6350 from ATI, or AMD as they're known nowadays. It is a DirectX 11 capable card running at 650 MHz on the core. It also features 512 MB of GDDR3 memory running at 400 MHz, or 800 MHz effectively due to how GDDR memory works. It is literally the exact same card as the HD 5450, just with a slight rebrand. And if you follow me to the kitchen, we'll take a deeper dive into the specs of the 6350. Underneath the hood, or the fan to be exact, lies a Cedar Pro specifically based chip, built on the Terascale 2 architecture. It features 292 million transistors, built using TSMC's 40nm fabrication process, and as mentioned is the same GPU as can be found in the HD 5450. It features 2 compute units, which gives us 80 shading units in total, 40 per compute unit. Think of these as 80 individual CPU cores. It doesn't quite work like that, but it makes it easier to comprehend. There are also 8 texture mapping units and 4 raster operations pipelines as well. The GPU also features 8 KB of L1 cache per compute unit, and 128 KB of L2 cache overall. The 512 MB of GDDR3 memory runs on a 64-bit wide bus. For the benchmarks that we're going to be running on the HD 6350, we're going to be running it through some games, which are GTA 5, CSGO and Crysis, just to see what sort of gaming performance this can offer in a relatively modern game, GTA 5, and some older games, CSGO and Crysis. We had also tested Warframe as well, but as mentioned in the previous video, that can actually be quite inconsistent because the path that you have to take through the mission can differ run to run, so it's not actually a fair comparison at all. First up is GTA 5, a game you probably wouldn't expect to be able to run on this graphics card. And you'd be right, sort of. We ran this at both 800x600 and 400x300, which was achieved by setting a resolution of 800x600 and changing the frame scaling option in the settings to 0.5. Performance was playable but not at all comfortable in either test. With 400x300, the main issue was how awful the game looked at such a low resolution. It was so bad to the point that my eyes were hurting from the strain. 800x600 dropped as low as 17 FPS, with a max of around 25 in the city, whereas 400x300 improved this to between 26 up to around 35 FPS. 800x600 had noticeable input lag throughout, with the inputs occasionally locking up entirely. 400x300 fared better here, with minimal to no input lag or locking up. Both had issues with inconsistent frame times throughout, with 800x600 experiencing spikes of up to around 87 milliseconds at worst, with 400x300 having spikes throughout of up to around 70 milliseconds. 400x300 averaged 50% higher FPS than 800x600 did, at 33 versus 22 for the higher res, with 1% and 0.1% low frame rates seeing boosts of 50 and 28.57% respectively, over what 800x600 managed to achieve. Both resolutions required different overclocks to remain stable throughout the tests. With the overclock however, 800x600 couldn't match the performance of 400x300 at stock clocks. It comes close in 1% and 0.1% lows, but average FPS is down a fair bit. It's still in the 20s throughout the city, although any signs of input lag are gone. Occasional locking up of the inputs remains however, and overall, gameplay is still really uncomfortable. 400x300 with the overclock widens the gap it had over the higher res at stock, with 41, 30 and 23 FPS for its average 1% and 0.1% low frame rates respectively, or in other words, 57.69, 50 and 43.75% increases respectively over 800x600 with an overclock. It still had some inconsistent frame times, although not as bad as stock, and for the vast majority of the time was over 30 FPS. That said though, the amount of aliasing on the edges of things is quite frankly beyond awful due to the low resolution and is not at all a comfortable experience. CSGO, being a lighter game graphically than GTA 5 is a game more suited to what the 6350 can realistically manage. That said though, it required settings turned down to their lowest and a resolution of 800 by 600 to run smoothly. 720p was tested as well, but mainly to give a comparison of how higher resolutions perform. There were practically no issues at the lower res, with 800 by 600 having only one occasion of brief but noticeable micro stuttering. It dipped into the mid 40s FPS wise occasionally, but overall ran great. The same can't be said for 720p though. The game was noticeably stuttery despite being over 30 FPS at all times. This means that the frame times are very inconsistent. It was hard to even aim at the enemies, and you certainly wouldn't want to play at this resolution on the 6350 even if you absolutely had to. 800 by 600 managed 68, 36 and 25 FPS for its average 1% and 0.1% low frame rates respectively, with 720p managing 43, 23 and 16, a drop of around 36% in performance across the board. 800 by 600 managed 68, 36 and 25 FPS for its average 1% and 0.1% low frame rates respectively. The overclock improved things massively for 720p. Gameplay was far smoother but still suffered from the occasional but noticeable bout of micro stuttering. Aiming at enemies was a lot easier and overall was a far better experience. 1% and 0.1% lows didn't improve much as you can see, evidenced by the inconsistent frame times still being an issue. Performance at the lower resolution improved even more, having no issues throughout whatsoever, and with figures of 80, 43 and 30 FPS for its average 1% and 0.1% low frame rates respectively, it's clear that this is by far the better resolution to be using with this game on the HD 6350. But Benchy, can it run Crysis? Well, yeah, kind of. Can it do it to a comfortable level of performance though? That's a different story. We tested in 64-bit mode at 720p and 1152 by 648 resolutions with the lowest settings. We were also limited to using DirectX 9 as DirectX 10 for whatever reason locks the monitor refresh rate to 50Hz with no way to change it. That aside, both resolutions showed the game to be actually mostly playable. However, both had issues with micro stuttering throughout, which isn't particularly noticeable in parts but very noticeable in others, such as the latter few minutes of the test we run here, which were pretty bad but still manageable. Both resolutions had major issues with texture and object popping as well, meaning that at points the enemy might actually be able to see you because an object you're hiding behind hasn't actually rendered yet. This wasn't bad enough to be a game-breaking issue in any way though, at least not in this test. At stock, 720p managed 40, 28 and 18 FPS for its average 1% and 0.1% low frame rates respectively. 1152 by 648 being a lower resolution but not by much, saw boosts in figures of 17.5, 21.43 and 16.67% for its average 1% and 0.1% low frame rates respectively. Not bad for such a small decrease in resolution. Crysis, being one of the most intensive games of the past in terms of graphics, wasn't able to overclock as high as the other games. GTA 5 and CSGO managed core clocks of 775 and 760 MHz respectively, but Crysis required that drop down to 735 MHz for stability. 720p could now pretty much match 1152 by 648's performance in the benchmark. It still had issues with object and texture popping and micro stuttering at times, especially in the latter few minutes of the test, but overall performed noticeably better than stock did. 1152 by 648 was now averaging over 50 FPS and showed an improvement in 1% and 0.1% lows, indicating that it is approaching relatively smooth gameplay overall, but it does still suffer from some micro stuttering and object and texture popping at times as well. Overall it performed noticeably better than stock did. So yeah, to conclude, I'm actually quite impressed with how well the HD 6350 did, especially for a card, or especially considering that it cost under $30 on release, and the fact that it can play CSGO, albeit at a fairly low resolution, can actually still play it. And I'm also quite surprised by Crysis too, considering that's historically a very tough game to run. the fact that this could even come close to running it is fantastic. I mean, the game is playable, but as you saw, you are going to be experiencing a lot of micro stutter at times, but it's not bad to the point that you can't play it. I mean, it's just going to be a bit annoying sometimes, but yeah, overall I'm actually really impressed with how well the 6350 did. Before we finish up today, I'd like to give special shout outs to Patreon supporters TazFaeDodge and ShadowInTheVoid for helping to make all of this possible. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a comment and a like, and subscribing to our channel if you'd like to see more content like this, and maybe even sharing the video with people you think may enjoy it. And although there's no obligation to do so, you can support us in creating these videos through our Patreon at patreon.com/BenchyTests, or through Ko-fi at ko-fi.com/BenchyTests. And if you do decide to become a patron, you'll gain early access to all of our videos for as long as you remain a patron. So thanks for watching our video. It means a lot to us that you would take the time to watch our content. Hopefully we'll see you in the next one.